How's everybody doing? You even brought a box for me to stand on. Thank you very, very much. Huge honor to be here with you tonight. We're sorry that we're a little bit late. Had a hard time getting out of O'Hare, but better late than never, and we thank you for showing up, being here. I know that we can't get everybody into the main room, but after we finish our remarks and we answer some questions, we're going to come back here. If there's anybody who would like to hang out or take a picture or just have a chance to say hello, we'd love to be able to come back and greet you personally. But thank you for welcoming us. I think you're going to be able to listen to what we're talking about in here. And then Cynthia,
she went into the hole,
has left. But Cynthia is typically our right hand in these meetings, and so she takes the other mic to those who would like to ask a question. So if there's someone in this room who during the main event would like to ask a question, we'll try to get the microphone out to you. You're confirming that, Stephen, yes, right? Sir. We're gonna try to do that. So if you've got a great question, and maybe you in the back, then get ready. But thank you for being here. There's just no more critical time to be alive and on this planet and to be an American. The biggest challenges of our lifetimes, and perhaps of this country, and not to be too grandiose, but given the fact that we've got about 10 years in which to act against climate change before it's too late, maybe the most important moment in the history of human civilization on this planet. And it's up to us, no pressure, but we got to be up for this moment. And that's what this campaign is about. We're not against anyone, not against anything. We are for this country, every single one of us being able to participate to our maximum potential to meet these challenges and to be there, not just for those who are here with us today, but every single generation that will follow. So for doing your part, regardless of whom you get behind down the road, because we're all going to be on the same page come summer 2020, I say thank you, and I'm grateful to be here with you. Thank you all for having us. So we're going to take a question. Okay.
So we're going to pull two of things. All right.
Okay. There. Thanks for having us up. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Cool. All right.
So this is the question.
Yep.
Yep. He's watching.
So, it's a good song.
Here, and then after you just will walk in. Does that work? Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to go right behind you. I got it.
Get that hat.
By showing Texas the closest race it's seen in 40 years, Beto has proven that where there's a will, there's a way. With a candidate as progressive, driven, and inspiring as this, we can finally break his mind. Without further ado, here is him, the man, the myth, the legend, Beto O'Rourke.
time and being persistent and waiting for us and our delayed flight out of Chicago O'Hare so that we could be with you tonight. As we were just saying to our friends in the overflow room, and let's hear it for them. Hopefully they can hear it. Overflow room, are you there? Yeah! They're calling in. They're calling in. We are really grateful. There could not be a more important moment to be alive, to be in this country, to be an American, and to have the weight and the responsibility and the opportunity to decide the future of this country in your hands at this moment. So much rests on those who are here right now, especially in the state of Iowa, where you have such a defining and decisive role to play for the rest of the country. And in all of my 18 years, in all of my 18 days on this campaign trail, I have learned that you take this stuff very seriously. Incredibly thoughtful questions, wanting to hold those who wish to hold positions of public trust accountable for their actions, for what they say, for the thought that they put into how they're going to implement these ideas for our country and for one another. And so for that, I am grateful. And as we were reminding the Overflow group upstairs, come summer 2020, we are all going to be on the same team, behind the same nominee, whoever she or he may be. We're going to defeat Donald Trump. Together, Republicans and Democrats and Independents, rural and urban, those of you who go back 10 generations or 10,000 years on this continent, and those of you who just showed up 10 days ago. All that will matter going forward is we are Americans, and that we have this opportunity together. Do not allow them to divide us or to define us by our differences. To whom we pray, who it is we love, where we live, none of that stuff matters as much as the fact that we are Americans. Let's decide from this moment going forward, before we are anything else, we are Americans first. You with me on that? At almost every turn of this country's history, when we have included more people in the success of this country, in the story of this country, we have done better. And we are in an historic opportunity to do that right now, especially given the president that we have seeks to divide us, seeks to play upon these differences, exacerbate the divisions that already exist in this country. Folks who've had power have been able to keep their purchase on power at the expense of powerless. It's the story of human civilization for as long as there has been one. And they use our differences to keep us apart, or to make us angry, or to make us afraid of one another or of ourselves. And as those powerful men and women, corporations in this country, gain more power, they use this system against the rest of us. Unrestrained money and influence that buys outcomes as well as access, invites the cynicism and the distrust and the disengagement of millions of our fellow Americans who see their government owned by those who have the power to purchase it. We run the risk of becoming a democracy in name only, as the safeguards of our institutions are used by the powerful to manipulate the process. Members of Congress choosing their own voters, not the other way around. The Supreme Court deciding that corporations are people and money is speech. PACs and special interests buying legislation and elections wholesale. Voting rights not being expanded, but being withdrawn. Now the only answer to this is a vigorous, and I mean a powerful democracy. But it must be both a political democracy and an economic democracy. Every single one of us, every child, every man, every woman, must be able to see a future for themselves in this country, or this country will have no future as a democracy. check against the inertia of power that we see, the only way to break up the unprecedented concentration of power and wealth and privilege that we see in America today, that we have not seen, unless you were alive 120 years ago during the last Gilded Age, in the same way that that moment provoked a progressive response, so too do I believe in this country at this moment. And that we're going to find a way to come together to break up the power where it is held right now and return it back to people. It will require reforms in our democracy. It means a new Voting Rights Act signed into law. It means that we have same-day and automatic voter registration in every single part of the country. So every single it means that we end gerrymandering in this country. And we get big, unaccountable money out of our politics. That's why we don't take any back money in this country. But you cannot have a full political democracy, one of those bold progressives from more than 100 years ago, Teddy Roosevelt told us, unless you have something approaching an economic democracy in this country. That means that one job should be enough for every single American who works full-time, to be able to raise their families, to pay the note on the mortgage, to put food in front of them, and to be well enough to return to work the next day. It means that we should win that fight for 15 at a minimum for every single one of us, and especially those school teachers and educators who in Iowa typically It means that after all of the sacrifice of those educators, and that child is 18 years old, that he or she is both college ready to go on to debt-free higher education and career ready to go work a job that they're trained for, that provides purpose and function in their lives and allows them to work near or where they live right now and pays a real paycheck. That means investing not just in higher education, but strengthening, not diminishing, the power of unions in this country, ensuring every single American sees the path if they choose to apprenticeship that will allow them to learn a skill or a trade that will then allow them to command a living wage for the rest of their lives. It's missing in too many parts of America right now. Now, these are investments. They are investments that will produce a return over the lifetime of the beneficiary, not just that student now able to afford to go to Iowa State, but not just their family, but this community where they come back home to, that education that they will drive back in to the success of their hometown, or their state, or their country. When we invest in one another, when we include more people into the process, this country is better. Here's a great opportunity for us. Economic, social, and otherwise. There are more than 1 million dreamers in the United States of America, most of whom came to this country at a very tender age. English may be the only language they speak, and yet those 1 million of our fellow Americans, who are just as American in any way that matters to me as anyone else in this room, they're not just the students in the classroom, which is the way that a lot of us like to think about dreamers. They're very often the teachers in the classroom. They're not just benefiting from those who have their lives on the line tonight in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Libya, in a world halfway across the world. They are those who are serving right now, bearing the battle for the rest of us. So what if we decided that instead of deporting them back to a country they do not know, whose language they do not speak, where they may not have any relatives, and if against those long odds they are successful and they will be successful for that place, we free them forever of any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens right here in this country. In terms of bringing people in, what if in a country which also happens to be the wealthiest and the most powerful on the face of the planet, the most powerful world history has ever known, where there are people in 2019 dying of diabetes, of the flu, of curable cancers, where we have a maternal mortality crisis that is 3 times as deadly for women of color. We have a crisis in infant mortality. The divide between infant mortality in Black America and white America today is greater than it was in 1850, 15 years before the end of slavery. Now, if your conscience does not call you to do the right thing, then perhaps our self-interest will. When millions of our fellow Americans cannot see a doctor, take their child to a therapist, afford their prescriptions, they are not well enough to go to school, or to raise their families, or to work a job, or to start a business, or to keep that family farm from their parents and invest in their community. They're not well enough to write a poem, or create a piece of art, or start a punk rock band and tour the country. I was able to do when I was 18 years old. And we all lose out on the potential that is never realized. On that young man that I met in Laredo, Texas, 27 years old, has glaucoma and diabetes, has seen a doctor once in his life, and that doctor told him that he would be lucky to see the age of 40. And what we know is that not only do we lose out on everything he was supposed to do in his life, the very reason that God put him on the planet in the first place, every day that he doesn't live past 40. But as he gets closer to death, and begins to show up at the emergency room more and more often with no ability whatsoever to pay the bill. You will pay the bill. I will pay the bill. If you're lucky enough to have insurance in the first place, if you're lucky enough to be able to pay taxes in this country in the first place. Universal, guaranteed, high-quality healthcare may be expensive, but it's a lot less expensive than the way that we fail to pay for healthcare in this country today. In a country that is needlessly losing lives in this way, universal has to mean everyone has access to a primary care provider. In a country where the county jail system is one of the largest providers of mental health care services today, people throwing a chair through the window of this place or their home in order to get arrested on purpose to treat their schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or depression. You ask the sheriff's deputies and the police officers who have to arrest these men and women because they have no place to go other than the jail to be fed, to be housed, to be clothed, to be prescribed the psychotropic medications that for a little while at least make life bearable for them. And again, the moral imperative calls us to do the right thing while we have the capacity to do so. But in Houston, Texas, at least, it costs us $110 a night to keep someone locked up for mental health care. Fracture that cost, we can take care of them consistently or preventatively and free them to do whatever they're supposed to do in their lives. So universal health care also means mental health care for every single one of our fellow Americans. And that maternal mortality crisis that I just described, that is claiming the lives of so many women in this country, especially women of color, it is especially bad in the state of Texas, where we have closed more than a quarter of our family planning clinics, making it so hard for women to get a cervical cancer screening, family planning help, or just to see a provider of any kind at all. And we are losing them. And so universal health care also means every woman makes her own decisions about her own body. I think about, especially because there are some younger people in this room today. Some who are in college, some who may be in the second grade, first, kindergarten, okay, first. And you know, so often people in my position, a little bit older, I'll be 47 in September of this year, are 47, we're tempted to say, and it can sound patronizing because it is, you know, you're going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and you can't wait to see what you do. The truth of it is, and you all know this as well as I do, because you're leading it right now, that you're the leaders of this moment, and you always have been. When we look back to our most heroic moments in this country's history, we think about those who stormed the beaches at Normandy they're 17, 18, 19 years old, risking and losing their lives for this country and to make the world safe for democracy, and they did. When we think about those who rode those Greyhound buses through the Deep South, taking their lives into their hands, those who sat at the lunch counter in Greensboro, or Rock Hill, South Carolina, or crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, those who lost their lives in the pursuit of civil rights, not for some, and not only for those who look like them, but for all of us, so that everybody can contribute to your full potential. They've always been distinguished, not just by their leadership, but by their youth, perhaps because they understand better than anyone else that they will bear the consequences of the current policies unless they change them, sometimes by forcing the conscience of this country. So we thank Lyndon Baines Johnson, my fellow Texan, for the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. But really, truth be told, the credit goes to those who forced him, and the members of Congress at the time who voted for it, to do the right thing. And so when it comes to climate right now, we know, if we still listen to the scientists, that this climate, this planet has warmed 1 degree Celsius just since 1980 over pre-industrial revolution levels. And the fires that we see in California, the 58 inches of rain that fell from the sky on Houston, Texas, which is the landfall record for as long as we've been keeping them in North America, and it happened just in 2017. And by the way, it was the third 500-year flood in 5 years in that one city. They should be good for 1,500 years, but they're not. The droughts through which our farmers in the Panhandle in Texas, and maybe some here in Iowa, have persisted in order to grow the food and the fiber that feeds and clothes not just this country, but really so much of the rest of the world. All of that is going to be much worse, more frequent, more profound, more persistent, more devastating. The lives that we have already lost to climate change are nothing compared to the lives that we will going forward. If you're worried about 400,000 apprehensions on our southern border, and by the way, that compares to 1.6 million apprehensions in the second year of the George W. Bush administration. But if you're worried about the apprehensions we have today, imagine what it will be like when there are some countries in this hemisphere that can no longer sustain human life. And that's exactly the course that we're on today. But here's our chance. Those same scientists who tell us these fires and droughts and floods and storms are in part a result of our own excesses, our own emissions, and our own inaction. Give us 10 years within which to work together to save ourselves, the planet, and those who will succeed us. The very youngest among us in this room, and those not yet alive on this planet. It's going to take something just short of a miracle, but it's going to take something that only the United States can do. This democracy that I began my conversation with is the most ingenious mechanism yet devised by humankind to call forth the power, the creativity, and the potential of a people. It's exactly what we did to face the Nazi threat, the existential threat to Western democracies in 1941. It's exactly what we did to lift millions out of the Great Depression and build the largest middle class the world had yet seen. And it is exactly what we need to do now to free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, greenhouse gas emissions, invest in the jobs and technologies of renewable energy that will allow us to meet our obligation and allow this country once again to claim its status as the indispensable nation in the world, leading by example and convening the other countries of the planet to do their part. It's the only way that we will make it. I don't know what the odds are of us being able to accomplish it, but I know that it absolutely has to start now in this room right here on this So, no pressure, but this one's on us. And we've got to be a match for the moment. We cannot leave the people of the future looking back on us in judgment, as they will. And that's why I'm here. 12-year-old Ulysses, back in El Paso with his sister Molly, who's 10, and their little brother Henry, 8 years old. They will look back on this moment in 2050. Ulysses won't even yet be my age. And they'll either be proud as hell of what we decided to do. We put our differences behind us. Republicans and Democrats joined together to do the right thing for the future of this country. Or they will condemn us for what we failed to do while we still had the chance. And it includes everything that we are talking about, everything that we want to do. Because 243 years into this experiment, we're all created equal, to equal opportunity. No one is above or below the law. And we're the example for the rest of the planet. As Lincoln said, the last best hope of Earth. There's nothing that guarantees us another 243 or even another year of this experiment or this idea, but our will and our will to come together. So that's the way that we're running this campaign, to bring people together, not just to secure the nomination. That's what I want to do. Not just to defeat Donald Trump in November of 2020, although that's critically important to our prospects. To ensure that we all come together as a country, maybe even bigger than a movement, to be able to accomplish our priorities, to be defined not by our differences or the smallness or the pettiness of this moment. Don't watch cable TV or go on Twitter. We want to be known by our ambitions and our aspirations and the creativity and the ingenuity and the sacrifice and the service that we're willing to bring to bear to achieve them. That's what we're here to do, and that's why I'm grateful to run to serve you as President of the United States of America. So I want to thank you all for coming out. I came to listen, to learn. Cynthia Cano, stage right, has got a microphone. If you raise a hand, we'd love to hear your question, your comment, your suggestion, your idea. And we'll also go to the overflow room to see if we can't get a couple of questions from the folks there. Yeah.